Okay, welcome students to this next session on industrial metallurgy. In this session, we are going to discuss a very important diagram which is called the time temperature transformation diagram for steels, or popularly this is called as the triple T diagram. Okay, so initially we will see that how is a triple T diagram constructed. Minded that triple T diagrams, unlike the iron cementite diagram, which is a single diagram for all iron carbon alloys, the triple T diagram is a diagram for one specific composition of steel. So if you want to make a triple T diagram for a 0.8 percentage carbon steel, it would be a unique diagram. And then if you want a triple T diagram for the 1.5 percentage carbon steel, it would be a different diagram which will have to be constructed differently. But what is the purpose of triple T diagram? You see, the uh, iron cementite diagram though gives you the basic understanding as to how microstructures are involved in different steels and cast irons, but it tells us about the microstructure development in steels only under equilibrium conditions. But the industry generally does not follow equilibrium conditions. In the industry, you always have steels being very rapidly heated and then being rapidly cooled. So if you want to see that when a steel specimen containing austenite at a high temperature is cooled, is not being treated under equilibrium conditions, then how does austenite transformation take place and what type of phases are formed in the microstructure of the steel? Then some other tool is required, and the triple T diagram comes to a rescue over there. So this diagram is important as it tells us about the transformation of austenite as a function of transformation temperature and the time spent at that transformation temperature. And that is why these three T's: one T is for the transformation temperature, the other is for the time spent at that transformation temperature, and third T is the transformation of austenite to various other transformed products, phases, etc. And finally, in this session, we will also show you that after the construction, how does a neat and labeled triple T diagram specifically for a eutectoid steel look like. So let's start. Now, if you have to, so I again repeat that we are constructing the triple T diagram over here for the metallurgically most simple steel, that is the eutectoid steel. And what does the room temperature microstructure of a eutectoid steel sample comprise of? It comprises of 100% perlite. So we have all eutectoid ferrite and eutectoid cementite present in the steel when the eutectoid steel is present at a low temperature like the room temperature. Now what do we do, or what type of a setup do we need to construct triple T diagram? You see, we need two furnaces. This first is a furnace, and the important thing is that the temperature of this furnace has been maintained at a temperature higher than the upper critical temperature of the steel for which triple T diagram is being constructed. What is this, and what is the purpose of furnace 1? In furnace 1, we would take the steel to a temperature higher than the upper critical temperature of the steel, as a result of which all steel samples after some amount of soaking at this temperature will have 100% austenite structure in them. Then we have this another furnace, because we know that why did we form austenite in the first furnace? Because there was no austenite under room temperature conditions. And now why did we need to have austenite in the steel? So that we could see that under the effect of different temperatures and time periods, how does that austenite transform. Now here austenite has got formed, but because steel has been held at a temperature greater than the upper critical temperature of the steel, this austenite is completely stable and has no urge to transform. So now we know that when a particular steel is present at a temperature lower than the lower critical temperature of that steel, the austenite becomes completely unstable and immediately or after some period of time transforms to some other phases. So we want to see that when steel has been held at a particular subcritical temperature, that is lower critical temperature, at a given transformation temperature at which the steel has been held, and after spending some amount of time, what amount of austenite actually transforms, decomposes, and it decomposes into what product phase or phases. So the purpose of this second furnace is that we'll bring over here samples of steel which have completely stable austenite present in them, and now in the second furnace those samples would be kept under conditions where austenite tends to become unstable and tends to transform. So here we are trying to do transformation of austenite, but still this temperature is very high. Even if austenite transforms over here at a given transformation temperature and after spending some time at the transformation temperature, how do we get to know that how much of austenite has transformed and into what product or product phases has it transformed? So what do we do is that when we have brought the steel sample at this temperature and we have held the steel sample at this temperature for stipulated period of time, we immediately quench it. And when we immediately quench it, austenite transforms to a phase called martensite. So if there was any austenite still present in the steel after being present at this subcritical temperature for some period of time, and when it has been quenched, we know ideally austenite should transform into, on quenching austenite, whatsoever austenite is present, it transforms to a phase called martensite. So if suppose you hold the steel at this temperature and when you quench it, you still find there is 100% martensite in it. Where has this 100% martensite come from? This 100% martensite has come from 100% austenite. That means that at a temperature, at this temperature where you had held the steel for some period of time, none of the austenite present in the steel transformed to some other phases. That is why 100% martensite has been seen in the sample, because there was still 100% austenite over here. But now suppose if you bring this second sample over here, you hold it at some subcritical temperature, and when you quench it, you see 5%, you see 95% martensite only. So that 95 martensite has come from 95% austenite. So that means 5% of austenite has transformed to something else. So it is this non-martensitic product in which our interest lies. So what we'll do is, for example, I hold the steel sample. So this is a furnace austenization bath. This is again a furnace subcritical bath. This third is a water bath or a brine solution bath or an ice bath. So basically this is a quench bath where we will actually try to quench the steel sample. Quenching means that the alloy has been cooled at a temperature, cooled at a cooling rate which is more than its critical cooling rate, and we'll discuss about this term in the sessions to come. But here, for your understanding, you just need to remember that if austenite phase is present in the steel and the steel is quenched, whatsoever austenite was present will transform only into martensite. It will have no other option. So where does our interest lies? As I said on an earlier just a while ago, our interest lies in the non-martensitic phases that would be seen in the sample that has been quenched and brought over here, because that would give you an idea that for a given transformation temperature and the time spent at that transformation temperature, how much of austenite had transformed and into what phase. So students, if you do that, okay, just for an example, what I've done is I'm showing you that for this first sample, after the steel had been held at this uh, uh, temperature above than the UCT, for example, we kept the temperature of this furnace at 750 degrees centigrade. So when you have held the steel sample at 750 degrees centigrade and you have given 6 hours of holding at that temperature. For example, let us suppose that the steel contains, for example, the steel gets 100% austenitic structure in it. Now this steel sample is immediately transferred to this second furnace, and in this second furnace, let us assume that we have held the steel at a temperature of 680 degrees centigrade. So when I hold the steel over here for 4 seconds, suppose I have assumed that, let me hold it for 4 seconds. After this 4 seconds is over, I immediately quench it. When I quench it, I see 100% martensite has got formed. 100% martensite has come from 100% austenite. So that means that if you take this steel sample and take it to a, when it has fully austenite structure in it, if you take it to a subcritical temperature of 680 degrees centigrade, 4 seconds of time period at 680 degrees centigrade is not sufficient to bring about transformation of austenite. So then what do you do is you take this second sample now, and this second sample was again containing 100% austenite. You take it over here at the same temperature 680, but now instead of 4 seconds you give a time period of 10 seconds. No sooner this 10 seconds time period is over, here you quench. When you quench, you try to see the microstructure. When you saw the microstructure, you are able to see 22% perlite and remaining 78% is martensite. So what does that 78% martensite reflect? That reflects that here, see, you students cannot see this microstructure because this is at a very high temperature. You see the microstructure over here and then you interpret what would have been over here. So when you see here that we have 22% perlite and 78% martensite, this reflects, this shows that when my steel sample was held at 680 degrees centigrade for 10 seconds, 22% transformation of austenite had occurred, and into what? Into perlite. 78% was still austenite, and that on quenching gave me 78% martensite. And similarly, you have noted down the time period that after at 680 degrees centigrade, after 38 seconds of holding, 100% transformation is there. Why? Because you do not see any martensite over here. So for 680 degrees centigrade subcritical temperature, right, transformation temperature, this experiment is complete. And see, we do it at a great number of time periods. I have just taken 3 for your reference, but we'll do it at 0.5 seconds, at 1 second, 4. The larger the number of data points you take, the better the triple T diagram would be constructed. But then when this one set of experiment at 680 degrees centigrade, one of the subcritical temperatures is over, then you obtain this type of an S curve. What is this curve showing? That after 5 seconds, note 1% only transformation had taken. Students, mind it, 1% transformation generally in metallurgy is considered as the start of transformation, and 99% transformation is considered as the end of transformation. So this diagram is showing you that when you were trying to do the transformation, sorry, this should be 680. When you were trying to do the transformation at 680 degrees centigrade, it took almost 40 seconds for entire austenite to transform into some other phases, and it took about, say, 12 seconds for 22% transformation to happen. And this period when austenite, see, 5 seconds were taken by austenite to transform. Minded students, austenite was present at a temperature lower than the lower critical temperature of the steel. Austenite ideally does not have any right to exist at such a low temperature, but still, if it was exist, it means it started transformation after 5 seconds. It means 5 seconds was its incubation period, and after 99 transformation or 100, so this was its total transformation time. 40 seconds is the total transformation time at 680 degrees centigrade, and 5 seconds is the incubation period at 680 degrees centigrade. Now you have done this experiment at 680 degrees centigrade. You will repeat this experiment at a series of subcritical temperatures like 650, then 600, then 550, then 500, then 400, 300, 200, 100. And after you have done these series of experiments, you'll obtain curves like this. And after having obtained curves like this, you will transform the start of transformation curve for each temperature on a temperature time curve. So we have taken all these curves, for example, and now I take a blank temperature versus time curve, and these are the axes on which the triple T diagram is presented. So what I'm doing is, suppose my first temperature was say 700 degrees centigrade. 700 degrees centigrade start of transformation time is being shifted here, then being shifted here, uh, then being shifted here. When I have transferred all the points which were representing the start of transformation, I join these points and a curve is obtained. This would be called the start of transformation curve. Then I go to each temperature and now I transfer the end of transformation time. So for 700, I have transferred the end of transformation time. Then for this 300, I have transferred the end of transformation point. And then after having transferred all the points which were representing the end of transformation time, I join this, and this curve that we have obtained is called the end of transformation curve. And students, always this time period is taken on the log scale, as I have marked the x-axis. Why? So that time periods which are very short and time periods which are hugely large, all types of time periods can be accommodated in a small space. So that is why this is taken on the log scale. Now let me show to you that how does the triple T diagram look when we have completely constructed it. So students, this is the upper critical temperature of the steel, and you can see I have drawn a dotted line over here to show that above this austenite, 100% austenitic structure is present in the steel, and this austenite that is present in the steel is completely stable. It neither decomposes nor has any urge to decompose. But then if you come anywhere below 727 and you have still not touched the start of transformation curve, austenite is still there in your steel, but that austenite is unstable. Students, this is the start of transformation curve. This is the curve for 50% transformation, and this is the end of transformation curve. And students, this portion of the start of transformation curve where the incubation period is minimum is called the nose or the knee of the transformation curve. And if I draw a tangent, suppose if I've started cooling off my steel from this place, if I bring a cooling curve and which just passes touching the nose as a tangent, then this rate of cooling that I am getting is called critical cooling rate. Critical cooling rate, see, if you enter the start of transformation curve, this means that austenite is going to decompose. Importantly, it is going to show a decomposition which is diffusion based. And now if your cooling rate increases, and if your cooling rate is such that austenite, your cooling rate is not able to enter these curves, that means austenite will not transform through diffusion. Then austenite will have only one option to transform to martensite. But for martensite also, there is a temperature at which austenite to martensite transformation begins, and there is another temperature at which austenite to martensite transformation finishes. Until and unless you have extended your cooling to an extent that you touch the MF, then only 100% martensitic structure can be seen in the steel. One more important thing, students, from temperature of 727 to 550, if your cooling is such that you are entering the start of transformation curve and you come out of this, then austenite transforms to a product phase called pearlite. So everywhere over here you can see pearlite. But then if austenite transforms between 550 to 220, then it transforms into what, this should be 220, then it transforms into a product mixture called bainite. And if austenite is not able to transform even till a low temperature of 220, then the only option with austenite is to transform to martensite. So I think you have got at least some idea as to what is a triple T diagram, how do we construct it, and what are the different regions marked in it. In the next session, I'll again take up this labeled diagram, and then I'll show to you that how actually a triple T diagram is used to our advantage to understand the microstructures which would have got developed in the steel uh, with different types of conditions, right? I hope you have understood the things. Thank you so much for watching.